of every male child under 2 years of age in Bethlehem. Mary clutched her newborn son to her chest, her heart pounding as Joseph burst through the door of their temporary shelter, his face ashen with terror. "We must leave now," he whispered urgently, gathering their meager belongings. "The soldiers are already at the edge of town." Outside, the first screams of mothers pierced the night air. They had barely recovered from their harrowing journey to Bethlehem, Mary still weak from giving birth in a stable when no one would take them. The strange visitors had only just departed, shepherds trembling with awe, and foreign wise men bearing gifts fit for royalty, not a carpenter's son. These visitors had confirmed what the angel told Mary months ago: this child was destined to change everything. But now that destiny hung by a thread as Herod's men moved through the streets, their swords drawn. Joseph helped Mary onto the donkey, the infant Jesus bundled tightly against the cold night air. "Egypt," he said, his voice breaking. "We must reach Egypt." The border was days away across harsh desert terrain. Mary looked down at her son's peaceful face, wondering how this fragile life could possibly survive what lay ahead. How could this child, born among animals, hunted before he could walk, possibly be the promised Messiah? And yet, the stars still shone overhead, guiding them south toward an uncertain sanctuary. The first night on the road nearly broke them. With no shelter and limited supplies, they huddled behind a rocky outcropping as a sudden storm lashed the landscape. Mary's milk had barely come in, and Jesus cried with hunger that echoed across the empty wilderness. Joseph wrapped his cloak around them both, his body shielding them from the worst of the wind. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears mingling with raindrops on his face. "I should have found us better shelter." Mary touched his cheek. "You couldn't have known," she said, though doubt gnawed at her. Had they misunderstood God's plan? Was this truly the way a king should enter the world? As dawn broke, they heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. Joseph peered around the rocks, his blood freezing in his veins. Mounted soldiers approached from the north. Herod's men had expanded their search beyond Bethlehem. There was nowhere to hide in the barren landscape stretching before them. Mary pressed her hand over Jesus's mouth to quiet his cries as Joseph frantically searched for an escape route. The soldiers were less than half a mile away now, the morning sun glinting off their armor. Just as hope seemed lost, a dust storm appeared on the horizon, moving with unnatural speed toward them. Within moments, the air filled with swirling sand, reducing visibility to nothing. Joseph grabbed Mary's hand. "Now," he shouted above the howling wind. They stumbled forward blindly, the donkey braying in protest but following nonetheless. The soldiers' confused shouts faded behind them as the storm seemed to part just enough for the small family to see their path forward while concealing them from pursuit. 3 days later, exhausted and nearly out of water, they reached a small oasis. As Mary bathed Jesus's tiny body in the cool water, a caravan of merchants approached. Joseph tensed, ready to flee again, but the leader of the group, a woman with kind eyes and dark brown skin, immediately recognized their desperation. "You are running from something," she stated simply. When Joseph hesitated, she added, "We are heading to Egypt. You may travel with us if you wish." That night, as they shared the merchants' food around a campfire, Mary wondered at how help had appeared just when they needed it most. The caravan leader, Adina, had lost her own son years before and took a special interest in Jesus. "There is something different about this child," she told Mary one evening as they crossed into Egyptian territory. "His eyes hold wisdom beyond his age." Mary nearly revealed everything then: the angel's visit, the virgin birth, the prophecies, but something held her back. Instead, she simply nodded. "He has a special purpose," she admitted. Adina studied her face. "Then you must protect him at all costs," she said. "There are forces in this world that fear such purpose." The words proved prophetic. 2 weeks into their stay in Egypt, Joseph awoke from a nightmare, gasping for breath. "They found us," he said, his voice hollow with dread. "How?" Mary asked, but Joseph was already packing their belongings. "I saw them in my dream. Herod has sent men specifically for Jesus. They know we're in this region." Mary wanted to dismiss it as just a dream, but Joseph's visions had saved them once before. That night, they slipped away from the small Egyptian village where they'd found temporary refuge. They traveled deeper into Egypt than they had planned, eventually finding work and shelter with a community of Jewish expatriates in Alexandria. Years passed. Jesus grew from infant to toddler to child, showing remarkable intelligence and compassion. Mary watched him playing with other children, teaching himself to read, asking questions that left even the elders speechless. Sometimes she forgot the circumstances of his birth, the danger they had fled. But Joseph never did, constantly vigilant for any sign of threat. When Jesus was 5, news reached them that King Herod had died. Joseph again dreamed, this time of a return to Israel. "It's safe now," he told Mary, hope lighting his tired eyes for the first time in years. But Mary hesitated. "Are you certain? Herod's son now rules." The question hung between them, was it worth risking their child's life on the basis of a dream? That night, as Mary watched Jesus sleeping peacefully, she made her decision. They had trusted divine guidance this far, they would continue to do so. The journey back to Israel proved easier than their flight years before. Jesus, now old enough to walk much of the way himself, marveled at everything he saw. His questions were endless, his observations startlingly profound. "Why did we leave here?" he asked one day as they crossed back into Judean territory. Mary and Joseph exchanged glances. How much should they tell him about his origins, about the danger that had surrounded his birth? "Because sometimes," Mary finally answered, "we must protect what is precious until the right time comes." They settled not in Bethlehem but in Nazareth, Joseph's original home. There, Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, working alongside Joseph in his carpentry shop, studying scripture with unusual intensity. Sometimes Mary would catch him staring at the horizon, as if seeing something no one else could. On those occasions, she remembered the shepherd's awe, the wise men's gifts, the star that had guided them all. And she wondered what path lay ahead for this child who had entered the world in such humble circumstances yet had been deemed dangerous enough for a king to fear. Years later, as Jesus prepared to leave home and begin his public ministry, Mary took his hands in hers. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "Why we fled that night? Why we lived as refugees in a foreign land?" Jesus nodded, his eyes reflecting the same quiet strength she had seen in him since birth. "I understand that my life has purpose beyond myself," he said. "And that sometimes the most important journeys begin in the most unlikely places." As he walked away, Mary thought of all they had endured, the midnight escape, the desert crossing, the years in exile. She thought of how close they had come to losing everything, and how many times they had been saved by what some might call coincidence but she knew was providence. Their story, from stable to Egypt and back again, was one of fear transformed into courage, of danger overcome by faith. If you've been moved by this journey of hope against overwhelming odds, remember that the greatest stories often begin in the most humble circumstances. Like Mary and Joseph, we all face moments when we must choose faith over fear, when we must protect what matters most despite the cost. Their story continues to inspire because it reminds us that light can emerge from the darkest situations. Perhaps your own journey resonates with elements of their struggle and triumph. If so, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Each of our stories adds to the tapestry of human experience, and by sharing them, we create community. Subscribe for more narratives that explore the depths of courage, faith, and the extraordinary potential hidden within ordinary lives.